Let's jump right into today's explainer, because we're looking at a truly fascinating intersection of worlds. It's this completely unexpected connection between high-level U.S. statesmanship, the halls of the Senate, and a simple wooden chair in a classroom in sub-Saharan Africa. It's a story that absolutely proves how just a shift in perspective can transform a wildly complex problem into a remarkably simple, actionable solution.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this quote right here is just wonderfully counterintuitive. It's from Lawrence O'Donnell, the political analyst and host of MSNBC's The Last Word. Usually when we look at massive global issues, systemic poverty, huge educational disparities, the sheer scale of it just paralyzes us. We tend to think, well, I'm just one person, what can I actually do? But for O'Donnell, visiting Malawi, the extremity of the deprivation actually had the exact opposite effect. It was so foundational, so incredibly basic, that it completely bypassed the need for some complex systemic overhaul and pointed straight to a tangible action.
So I want you to hold this question in your mind as we go through this explainer today. Imagine millions of dollars being poured into global education, right? We're talking curriculum development, teacher training, thousands of laptops. But what if a teacher tells you they literally don't want any of that? What if the primary obstacle is simply that the children are sitting in the dirt? To really understand how this realization sparked a movement, we've got to look at the man who asked the question in the first place.
Section 1. A legacy of public service, scholarship, and statesmanship.
Now, to understand how a career in Washington sets the stage for a grassroots movement in Malawi, we really have to recognize that Lawrence O'Donnell isn't just a television personality. He's a deep student of policy and governance. Back in 1988, he started working in media relations and then as a senior advisor for the late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Decades later, in 2019, he delivered the inaugural lecture for the Daniel Patrick Moynihan Center for Scholarship and Statesmanship. And smack in the middle of those milestones, in 2010, he partnered with UNICEF to launch the K.I.N.D fund. Observing leadership under Senator Moynihan absolutely laid the groundwork for him taking on this global leadership role later on.
And his resume completely backs this up. He's a Boston native, a Harvard graduate, and he didn't just advise on policy, he actually executed it. He was the chief of staff for the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works and then the Senate Finance Committee. So this is someone who's highly trained to look at massive national infrastructures, budgets, supply chains, the whole shebang. When someone with this very specific background encounters what looks like an impossible logistical problem in a developing nation, they don't see a dead end. They see a puzzle just waiting to be solved.
Section 2. The Malawi Classroom Crisis, the Power of a Simple Realization. That realization, the absolute turning point, started with a school teacher friend who told O'Donnell that kids in Malawi literally just needed chairs. But when O'Donnell actually arrived in the country to see it for himself, his policy brain kind of took over, and he was initially super skeptical. He looked around and realized, well, Malawi doesn't have the furniture stores or those massive supply chains we take for granted here in the US. You can't just hop online and place an order for 1,000 school desks. He honestly thought he'd have to go back on his show and explain why the logistics made the whole thing impossible.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how quickly that skepticism was totally dismantled just by leaning on local ingenuity. So he meets with the UNICEF Malawi team. They introduce him to a local shopkeeper who had actually built a sample school desk. O'Donnell asks him, "Can you make 30 of these by the end of the week?" The shopkeeper says yes. And how did he do it? By hiring trained but currently unemployed local carpenters, painters, and metalworkers. They literally ran 3 shifts around the clock and delivered all 30 desks right on time. No international shipping, no massive corporate contracts. Just empowering the local workforce to solve a local problem.
Section 3. Delivering desks, delivering dignity, lifting students off the floor. That single, successful delivery of 30 desks completely proved the concept. It gave birth to the K.I.N.D fund, Kids in Need of Desks, launching this wildly successful 15-year partnership between MS Now and UNICEF USA. And let's look at the actual day-to-day impact this provides. We're talking about a sturdy desk with an attached bench that fits 2 to 3 students comfortably. But it's about so much more than just physical comfort. When kids aren't literally fighting for space on a dirt floor, they can actually concentrate. They can write legibly. Schools get these desks and immediately report higher attendance and way better retention. But take a look at that last point, because this is absolutely crucial. Sitting on the floor uniquely disadvantages young girls. When a girl in a skirt has to constantly worry about maintaining her modesty every single time she stands up to answer a question and then sits back down in the dirt, it's a massive distraction. So a desk isn't just wood and metal, it's the delivery of dignity.
Section 4. Scholarships empowering young women, closing the graduation gap.
So as the desk program flourished, a hidden problem was identified by Victor Chinyama, who was UNICEF Malawi's chief of communication at the time. He pointed out that while primary school is free in Malawi, secondary school, so high school, is not. Because of this, boys were graduating at double the rate of girls, with a lot of young women dropping out for early marriage. So the K.I.N.D fund decided to expand, and this brilliantly illustrates the astonishingly high return on investment here. For $158, they were already funding a desk that serves multiple kids for years, but for just a bit more, $265, they realized they could fund a full year of high school for a young woman. The ROI for both of these interventions is just off the charts.
Let's break down exactly what that $265 does, because it doesn't just pay a tuition bill. It removes literally every conceivable barrier to that girl's education. It covers tuition and boarding fees. It covers the bus ride to actually get there. It pays for the textbooks and the uniform, and crucially, it provides menstrual hygiene products so she doesn't have to miss school every month. Plus, it even includes mentoring and psychosocial guidance. It's a comprehensive, total safety net designed to ensure she completely succeeds.
To really humanize these numbers, let's take a look at Joyce Chisal. She was the third of 4 children, and her father simply couldn't afford secondary school fees. The K.I.N.D scholarship changed everything for her. It allowed her to attend St. Michael's Girls Secondary School. From there, she actually went on to study medical library sciences at Kamuzu University. And the ripple effect of that? Because her parents weren't being crushed by her school fees, they were actually able to afford to send her younger brother to high school and university too. So one single scholarship changed the trajectory of an entire family.
Section 5. The ripple effect of action. 15 years of compounding good. Let's move to and see how this builds when we look at the macro statistics over the last 15 years. 405,000. That is the massive number of physical desks that have been built by local workers and delivered to classrooms all across Malawi since that very first order of 30. Just incredible.
38,000. That's the number of scholarships awarded to young women. Women who, as Victor Chinyama noted, are now becoming the doctors, the teachers, and the nurses who are literally building the future of their entire country. 1.6 million. That is the staggering number of learners who have been directly impacted by these interventions. 1.6 million lives changed because someone looked at a massive problem, ignored all the complexity, and just focused on the dirt floor.
We started today by talking about statesmanship. And you know, true statesmanship isn't just giving lectures or drafting complex policy in Washington. Sometimes it's just finding the most practical, obvious barrier to human dignity and taking it away. Lawrence O'Donnell and UNICEF took a simple piece of wood and turned it into a future for 1.6 million children. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. Look around your own world, your own community. What is your desk? What is that obvious, almost invisible problem right in front of you that is just waiting for your solution?